Representing the interests of the American people with this decision. Is it in America's interest to do more to fight climate change, or is it not?
Well, we have actually, Jake. I mean, since we're at pre-1994 levels with our CO2 footprint right now. In fact, by the time the Paris Accord was signed, we had reduced our carbon emissions in this country by 18%.
Right, but to do more,
To do more. Look, we are leading the world with respect to innovation and technology at reducing our CO2 footprint. And this agreement was truly about putting America second or last. It was not about learning from what America's doing. It was about putting constraints on the economy, as the president talked about. This is not an agreement or a decision with respect to engagement on CO2. America is going to continue to engage in CO2. We're going to export innovation and technology. We're going to continue our seat at the table and negotiating with the nations across the globe.
Right.
But it's going to be with an attitude of putting America's interests first,
but sir,
and making sure that we don't penalize ourselves.
China is the world's leading emitter of carbon pollutants. The United States is in second place. I mean, it's not as though the U.S., when you talk about how the U.S. is leading the world, the U.S. is also second when it comes to creating these pollutants. And
under this agreement, Jake, as you know, China took no steps to reduce their carbon emissions until the year 2030. I mean, the rest of the nation applauded what we did in Paris because it put us at an economic disadvantage while the rest of the world continued the status quo. And it caused us to have to focus on a reduction of 26 to 28%. You know, what's not known, Jake, is that the 26 to 28% reduction that we agreed to in Paris, with every action that was taken by the Obama administration, we still fell 40% short of those targets. And so it was a failing agreement to begin with, but yet it constrained our economy while the rest of the world skated.
So what should the U.S. do?
That's a bad deal for this country.
So tell me, but President Trump talked about the possibility of maybe renegotiating, of trying to get a better deal. If you could create that deal right now to do something about climate change, what would that deal look like? Obviously, China would have to do more. What would the U.S. be willing to do?
It should be with a focus and attitude toward technology and innovation to ensure as energy is used to generate electricity in this world, that we do so at efficient and emission levels. And we have clean coal technology. We have hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling to the conversion of natural gas that's contributed largely to this reduction in CO2 emissions. We need to export that to the rest of the world so they can follow our lead.
President Trump said that the Paris Accord would hamstring U.S. economies. 25 major U.S. corporations, including oil companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil, the former employer of your Secretary of State, they all penned a letter arguing that the withdrawal would hurt the potential job growth in energy and tech sectors. And as you know, Rex Tillerson was one of those internally who was arguing to stay in the Paris Accord. There's also Tim Cook, the head of Apple. Do you think that all of these companies, Exxon, Apple, Rex Tillerson, they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to creating jobs in this country?
Look, I mean, I think that it's very speculative that those jobs would be impacted adversely, but what we do know objectively is that lost manufacturing jobs, lost energy jobs in this country, they were happening under the climate action agenda of the past administration. That's a fact. And so this president has made a commitment to the American people that he's going to put the interest of this country first. And that includes on the environment as well as our economy. You know, Jake, I don't know why we've bought this the last several years, that you can't be pro-growth, pro-jobs, and pro-environment. We've done that as a nation throughout our entire history. In fact, since 1980. Since 1980, we've obviously experienced tremendous GDP growth. But during that same time frame, we've reduced air pollutants under the Clean Air Act by 65%.
Right.
I mean, we truly do lead the world at finding the balance between jobs and the economy. It was the past administration that said that we couldn't do that we had to choose between the environment and jobs. This president is saying that's a false choice.
Again, I'm sorry. With respect, sir, you didn't answer my question.
Sure I did.
But all these, you said it was speculative, but all these CEOs in the United States, including from Mobil and Exxon and others, say this is going to hurt the creation of U.S. jobs. This is going to hurt our industry. I understand that that is not the attitude or the belief of the coal industry 100%.
Well, it's not just the coal industry, Jake. I mean, the Clean Power Plan alone, which was an extension of what happened in Paris, was a $292 billion hit to our economy, a contraction of up to 400,000 jobs in this country, including energy jobs. So this is not just that's not speculation. That's fact. That's objectively measured. And what you're hearing, I think, was concern about what occurred. But all that being said, Jake, this is not disengagement. The president has indicated that there's going to be continued discussion and engagement around what? A deal that works for this country, that strikes a balance between the environment and the jobs in our economy.
So what might that look like if it's not the 24 to 26% reduction? I mean, how much is the Trump administration willing to attempt to try to reduce carbon emissions?
Was I indicated
15%?
Well, what have we done already from 2000 to 2014? An 18% reduction. Again, through technology and innovation. That should be the focus, not artificial targets that can't be measured or, met, contracting our economy here while the rest of the world doesn't have to meet those targets.
As you know, sir, there are a lot of people in the national security community that also oppose the withdrawal from this agreement because they feel as though climate change is real. This keeps the United States engaged in the Middle East, which causes its own set of problems. Also, that climate change and the effects of it create problems in terms of migrants, instability throughout the world. What is the national security response to their concerns at the Pentagon?
You know what's interesting about that, Jake? We've already this as a country once. As you know, in 2001, the United States exited the Kyoto Protocol. And if you go back and read the media accounts in 2001, in March and April, in that time frame of 2001, the same arguments that are being made today were being made by the German Chancellor. Our alliances were not impacted then. They won't be impacted now.
Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, said that if the U.S. withdraws from the agreement, it would signify that President Trump does actually believe that climate change is a hoax, as he has tweeted. Does the president believe climate change is a hoax?
This is not about whether climate change is occurring or not. This is about making sure that America, as we negotiate CO2 reductions, that we do so with an America First approach. And that's why it was a bad deal for this country when it was signed. It's a bad deal today. It puts us at an economic disadvantage. The president has said unequivocally that he is committed to continue the discussions about CO2 reductions, but with America at the forefront in those discussions.
Just a last simple question for you, sir, and I do appreciate your time and I do appreciate your taking these questions. Is climate change a threat to the United States in any way?
Look, I mean, I think what we know is that we have procedures and statutes in this country that require us to take steps to reduce air pollutants, and we're going to continue that process. This was about international agreements that put this country at a disadvantage, and writing those agreements and making sure that we put America's interests first. That's going to continue, Jacob, as we go.